I learned a long time ago that you only get the things that you want when you help other people get what they want. If I dropped dead right now of the coronavirus, that I helped as many people as I could to get what they wanted. And I made somebody smile. I made some men cry though, I think.
Hey, Warners, welcome to Women Your Mother Warned You About,
The podcast that makes business sexy again.
I'm Gina Tremarco, sales trainer and consultant at Pivot 10 Results and founder of Carolina Improv Company.
And I'm Rachel Pitts, mommy, wifey, and loan officer with U.S. Mortgage, the singing lender over here. I got to come up with a jingle. Damn it.
I know you say that on every episode.
I do. And I don't think that I need it enough to do it, apparently, because there's other things that are taking priority.
Well, we still need a jingle.
We still need a jingle. That would take priority.
I mean, we were supposed to be playing piano and doing karaoke, and we could do online karaoke right now together and just sing. Oh, wait, we sang on the last episode we recorded.
That's right. Now, online karaoke, I got to look into that with right now at the current time of this recording of this podcast, where the entire nation is, actually the entire world is dealing with the coronavirus. And our guest today, Meridith Powell, she has some really great strategies of how to get through crisis. And she just has a wonderful story.
I love her story. So here's my takeaway from... Here's my one thing I want to share. I wrote this down. I'm paraphrasing, but what she said was, "What weighed me down propelled me forward." What weighed me down propelled me forward. So that was based on her personal story that she shares with us on this episode, and then how did she use that adversity to get to the C-suite in her career and be where she is today. She's super cool. A takeaway that you might have from it, Rachel?
I think really the biggest takeaway that she gave to me, which I can relate to so much, is that the adversity that you have lived through is not something that you should hide. It's something that you should utilize in order to deepen the connections that you make with other people as you're trying to walk your life path and your business life. Because she mentions a few stories in this episode where other people opened up to her, she opened up to people, and it opens that doorway. The vulnerability allows deeper connection to be obtained.
There's so much great stuff on this episode. A little bit about Meridith before we get started. She's an award-winning author, keynote speaker, and business strategist. With a background in corporate leadership and sales, her career expands over several industries, including banking, healthcare, and finance. She works with companies to find strategies that help uncertainty become a competitive advantage. And boy, are we dealing with a lot of uncertainty at this moment of this recording, like Rachel has already said, throughout the world. So I think you're going to really enjoy what Meridith brings to the table on this episode of Women Your Mother Warned You About. So let's sit back and listen to it. Welcome, Meridith, to Women Your Mother Warned You About.
Thank you. I am really looking forward to this.
We're excited that you're looking forward to it because we think you are a woman your mother warned you about, as Rachel and I are. And we kind of have some philosophies on what a woman your mother warned you about is. For instance, we believe the best way to be successful is to be a woman who goes against the status quo and unapologetically...
I think that's a great one.
Unapologetically makes bold moves by being real, raw, relevant, and occasionally irreverent.
Sounds like a great list.
So what makes you a woman that our mothers warned us about?
Well, I would say that the biggest thing that makes me a woman that our mothers warned us about is that I live life wide open. I have opened the kimono, nothing to hide. Everything is out on the table.
Oh, love it. That is awesome. I knew that we resonated well with you when Doug sent us some kind of like your response back to being on the show. And thanks to Doug for bringing you to us. You've got a really, our life is all about stories and personal stories, and that's what shapes us and I think really makes us successful in business. And you've got some great stories about how you worked your way to the C-suite. But before we go into that, you also have this great story about surviving and thriving, and really surviving and thriving based on what you kind of experienced in your personal life. Would you share that with our listeners?
Yeah, which I think is really kind of everybody's story, right? I mean, if you can learn to embrace what happens to you in your personal life, it's going to be what shapes you and makes you probably a woman that your mother's warned you about. But I grew up in a family of addiction, like so many people have, but my story sort of went on steroids. I mean, I've lost 6 male members in my family, including my dad, both my brothers, and my first husband, have all died of addiction, and nobody made it past the age of 50. And I come from a female line of enablers. So one of the reasons when you ask me why I live, what it is that makes me a woman that, their mothers warned us about, is that I was really taught not to talk about things and not to, to keep the image at all costs as I was growing up. And I really believe that bred not only my brothers, my father's issues, but it bred my own issues of enabling, because we just weren't dealing it with reality. We weren't able to be strong and vulnerable at the same time. It either had to be one or the other. And my family didn't like vulnerable. So my mother was very much about keeping the image up, keeping the picture. And it took me a long time to come out the other side of that. But Katie barred the door when I did, because it just created a whole different type of person.
Wow. What's the biggest thing that you learned from coming through that?
Wow, there's so much that I learned coming through that. I would say really the biggest thing is that you would think that everybody thinks that when you're wrapped up or tied up in addicts or people in your life that have, issues, that it's their fault and it's their problem. And everybody made me a martyr because I stood by my first husband, because I tried to take care of him and everything. And the biggest thing that I learned is the worst thing you can do in life is go down with the ship. Is that, you can't help somebody who doesn't want to be helped. And even, and it's not good for you to spend your energy trying to do it. The coolest thing that happened, if there had to be a cool thing that happened, is that when my husband passed away when he was 41 years old, I was 36. And all of a sudden, when my energy wasn't going into trying to save him and all the energy came back into me, wow, my whole life took off. I didn't realize what a big energy suck something like that was. And I just want to say that I'm one of these people that doesn't learn until the universe slams her into the wall. So anybody listening, you don't have to have 6 addicts in your life to learn this. Your drama-filled girlfriend is a good enough lesson. Just take it from there, okay?
That's awesome. And I definitely relate, because I come from an alcoholic household, and you grow up in that, and as a child you don't necessarily know that that's what it is, and so it impacts you in a different way of how you're affected by the way you're being treated by that person. And you kind of grow up thinking, what's wrong with me? What did I do wrong? I'm blaming myself, trying a million things to make things better. And it really more or less creates a resiliency to the adversity. And you don't even realize that you're building that up.
Yeah, I think absolutely. I mean, I think too that I didn't realize how sick I was too. That as soon as I became single, I started dating guys who treated me worse than my first husband, who was an addict, because I hadn't done enough work on myself. I mean, my therapist used to laugh at me. She'd be like, "Where are you finding these guys? You keep going another level." And I always thought it was their problem when it really was the things that had to be fixed in me.
I can bring the other side of the story to this. I have been sober 8 years. Thank you.
Congratulations.
So I would 100% agree with everything you're saying, Meridith. And sobriety is an inside job. And the people that are affected by, if they're not addicts, they're affected as well, but it is also an inside job because there's a whole blame game and blaming yourself. And like you just said, there's a lot of stuff to work through once you separate. But the one thing that I can say is that a change of environment is changing people, places, and things is a big deal. Because a lot of times, especially it sounds like in your scenario with your first husband, that it becomes a pattern of enabling and abusing, and the pattern has to be broken. And you're 100% right. I know lots of people in sobriety, and you've got to make the choice on your own. You can never help someone get there. They have to. You can lead a horse to water, and I know lots of people right now that are still working through stuff and various levels, and parents of addicts and those kind of things. And it's just something that somebody has to decide that they've had enough of themselves. And that includes the person like yourself on that end of things. There's a lot of great groups out of there. If anybody that's listening, there's groups for people that are not the addict. So it's an inside job. It's great.
And I go to Al-Anon meetings.
That's the one.
And that one. Which is also a 12-step program. So, it's I think good because you can understand, especially if you're dealing with an addict and the addict is going through a 12-step program, if you are going, because you also need to take care of yourself, because there's a reason. I mean, I didn't ask to be born into it, but if you're in a relationship where you chose to be with that person, I imagine you got more work to do, because some of it's a reflection on you and where you come from.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I find Al-Anon
everybody
to be
can use a 12-step program.
Yeah.
Our who was the guest with the Great Girls Network? Marjorie Miller. One of her books has the 12-step program, but it's like for anybody, because the thing about any great 12-step program is you go inside and figure out your shit, and then continuously try to figure out your shit, because it's not a one-shot deal. It's your rest of your life deal.
Yeah, I always said it was something that they should do in the sixth grade. But Rachel, you said something so important I want to pick up on, is that it wasn't until now when I actually started to read and write about a lot of that I had been through, that every time that my first husband had gone to rehab, he would come out of rehab and come back home and live with me. And living with me, he might as well have walked into a bar, because I was still as in major enabling mode. And I didn't really understand that I was really aiding his addiction at the level that I was. So, the thing about him was all of his addictions were socially unacceptable: drinking, missing work, owing money. All of my addictions, and they were addictions, saving him, working too hard, making excuses, all of mine were socially acceptable. And I actually got rewarded for them. And when I went to get healthy, people kind of got frustrated with me. Why aren't you doing more to save him? Why aren't you? So it's a complicated issue for the enabler as well as the addict, but really learning that me as an enabler, I was and remain as sick as he was.
They call it a family illness, and that's because everybody that's around it is. I know somebody right now who is desperately trying to help her son, and which is, she's even said to me, it's worse than her child being dead. She really, really wants to help him so badly, but she doesn't realize that she's enabling him. Like, if he keeps coming home and getting money, so then he keeps doing his thing, because she keeps saving him, because she feels bad. And it's just, I can't even imagine that scenario, because it's probably worse than your child being dead, because,
yes,
I have several friends with children in addiction. They're like, it's actually worse than your kid being dead, because you sometimes kind of wish they were, just because it would be easier. And that's just the worst. Like, you can't, you're not the one that can save them, and you have to do the tough love thing. But I don't know that I'd be capable of it either.
I don't know that I would be capable of it either. It's got to be the most difficult thing, but it's your only path out.
Yeah.
So looking at your success in business and your journey, because you've had a really interesting journey from entry-level employee to the C-suite, do you think that what you've gone through in this kind of adversity personally impacted how your success happened in your career?
I think everything really lies with that. You know how they say in life that, you really got to think back on your life and would you truly change anything? And living through a lot of death and stuff doesn't really sound like a great life, but other than the fact that I feel badly for the people that have passed in my life, I wouldn't trade anything because I wouldn't have learned the lessons that I learned. I mean, first of all, I was raised in a family where my mother had no intention that either my sister or I would work. I mean, we really were raised to get out of college and to marry well and to have children. Lucky for me, I married an addict. And if we were going to have any money at all, I had to work. And the only way I could put myself up, and then I was raised, I had to keep this image up. And if I was going to keep that image up, I had to have a lot of money. And so then I had to go into careers where I had to overachieve and overperform. And so there's no way I would, all the things that were weighing me down in the adversity were also the things that propelled me forward. The tenacity, the ability to look at a bad situation and find the one positive, and to find the thread through, the ability to just have, so many failures, and the fact that you get back up, and you keep trying. And the fact that, in a weird way, the fact that my mother wanted me to save face more than she wanted anything just had me keeping so many balls in the air until I finally crashed at the age of 41. But it put me on a high trajectory until I was 41 years old and took me from, I went to a crap college. I don't have a good education or anything like that. But it took me from pouring coffee to literally, I was the only female in the C-suite of a financial institution. And I was given the reins to write the strategy to take the company going forward. And it's a strategy they still use today. That never would have happened if I didn't feel so less than and feel so much that I had to prove. And, so I wouldn't go back and change it for those reasons.
So how did you get that opportunity to go from serving coffee to having that opportunity to write the strategy?
Well, the thing that as you can tell, my mother has been a huge influence on my life. But the very fact that she did say that the thing that young ladies ought to do was to volunteer in their community and she told me that it was my responsibility to make other people comfortable no matter where I went. So if I walked into a room full of people and they didn't know anybody, I was supposed to go up and talk to them. Yes, my mother taught me to talk to strangers. So my whole life became about that. Like any community I moved into, I immediately started volunteering, and I would go to lots of events and I would just walk up and introduce myself and start talking to people. And I'm lucky enough that I came about at a time, I've worked in both travel and tourism, healthcare, and the financial services industry. And I always got every job I had because I was outgoing. People assumed I was good at sales, and I was always well connected in the communities in which I lived. Now, none of that was business intuition or whatever. But as I look back on it now, it's been the greatest asset that I've ever had. Like anytime anybody said we need to know this person or something, like, oh, okay, I can connect you that way. And with that, I believe that if you build your network, it changes your life. I believe a network is everything. If you don't want your children to live in your basement the rest of your life, teach them to talk to people. And because you talk to people, you'll meet somebody who will lead to something, So doors have just always opened for me because I knew people. And then when I got in there, I would always be the only female. And because I was the only female, it meant I had to work harder. And when I worked harder, doors would open. And one person in there would see what I was doing and would open an opportunity for me. And I just started ignoring everybody who didn't want me to succeed and focusing on the one or two people who did. And one thing led to another, and I would have a lot of luck. I've got really good street smarts, and I'm good at business, and I've always known that. And I believe in what I think it's going to take to grow a business. And I would just put that down to the mat and say, give me 5 people and let me try. And then I'd blow it out of the water and another door would open.
Hey guys, really quick, hate to interrupt. I know you're enjoying this episode. Just want to give a shout out to Dermavogue, our sponsor, dermavogue.com. Dr. Turek and his wonderful staff over there help Gina and I look and feel our very best. Check them out, dermavogue.com. Thanks so much to Dermavogue. Everyone notices, but no one really knows.
I love the street smarts thing because I was raised very street smarts by a really tough Italian father who didn't finish grade school.
Awesome.
And might have did some stuff with the mob or, There's something to be said about street smarts that's not just about education. It's about that common sense and really being there. And I think what street smarts also does for you is emotional intelligence because it forces you to really understand and know people.
Yeah, I would say that too. And, that anytime, one thing that I mean, most of the businesses I've been in, by the time I got to the executive levels, it was just always me and a bunch of white guys. And the one thing I've always loved about working with a bunch of white guys is at the end of the day, the only thing they care about is numbers. It may be tough on the front end. Maybe I couldn't go to the bar and drink with them because they were all married. Maybe I couldn't go in to the private room at the country club. But if I could produce numbers and I could just keep my head long enough to do that, after that, they didn't care if I was little and green. They would give me an opportunity. And I just always really kept my sight on that and never really got distracted by the fact of what should have been fair and just and right, because that was a waste of my time.
So to me, that sounds like a piece of great advice when we talk about how do the genders work together well and the differences between us. Would it be your opinion that when it comes to working with men, it really is about the bottom line?
Yeah, I think it's definitely about the bottom line with men. The difference between men and women, I've always said in the workplace, is that if you think about kids in the backyard, women go outside when kids raise their voices and it feels like they're going to be of a fight, and men don't go outside until there's blood. Right? I mean, that's the difference between us.
That's a great analogy.
I mean, we're visual and collaborative and seeing all the different things that, that are happening. And every time I wound up in a male environment, I realized I had to play the game and win, and then I could change the game. And that's how it's always worked for me, is that I needed to know what the rules were. And then, okay, once I know the rules were, I can beat you hands down, no problem. And then once I beat you, I've got your attention and you'll start to do things my way. Because I knew the way they were asking me to do it wasn't going to sustain business long term. It really wasn't going to give us competitive advantage. But I knew for them to respect me, I had to beat them at their own game. That's fair. I got no problem with that.
Rachel, who does that sound like? Does that sound familiar?
What?
This comes like right from Laura Castleman when we had her on the show.
I'm thinking about how, what leads women to be that way. And I think we've had this discussion before with people is it the adversity that causes that for you? Or is it that are we born this way, that we just are willing to scramble through no matter what to get where we want to be? And so it's kind of like, is the chicken or the egg, I guess.
I think it's funny. So just because we're just having a talk between girls, I got a theory about this. And I feel like I tell my husband this all the time. Like men are good. Men are like, all of them are just kind of even. And women are either amazing or they suck. And there's no there's no in between. And the way that I feel is really great women just deal with the adversity and they push through it. Where all the drama and all the stuff comes in the workplace is everybody wanting the rules to be fair, wanting the rules to be just. They want to do all that before they change the game. And the reason men are just even across the board is because men are like, hey, if you beat the game and you're better than me, I'll follow you. I mean, they just kind of go with it. But when you get the opportunity to work with really great women, they're just willing to accept the adversity because they know on the other side, they are going to take this game to a whole other level. And then there's that group of women that just drag it
down.
And that's how I feel about it.
You're so bang on.
Well,
sorry, ladies.
True. And
it's true.
Sorry, but if you're one of those dragger downers.
Well, and it goes back to there are two types of women. There's the one type that will clap when you win and cheer you on when you win. And then there's the other type that'll give you a nice smirky smile and then talk shit about you behind your back because you won. about why you didn't deserve it, or, oh, she thinks she's so great because she won. Instead of like, I genuinely fucking love it when people win. Like Gina had something happen for her recently. It immediately brought tears to my eyes. But you know what I'm talking about, right?
I know what you're talking about.
And I saw it and I about died. I was
big.
like, fucking call me right now.
That was so funny. You were like, I gotta talk to you, whatever.
Because
Call
I
me
love
back.
that.
Right? Because you were so excited about my win.
Because I learned a long time ago that you only get the things that you want when you help other people get what they want. Because
It's
what
so true.
fucking matters
It's so
really?
true.
Oh, some money that I get or like a trophy? No, what I like is if I dropped dead right now of the coronavirus, that I helped as many people as I could to get what they wanted. And I made somebody smile. I made some men cry though, I think.
I think I've made some men cry.
I would have no doubts.
Yeah. And I want to add, Rachel, I think there's a third woman in that cheering arena. The third woman who goes, what about me? What about me? When's it going to be my turn?
The answer is when it's your turn.
I like to say the answer is never. That's because you're whining.
Whinging.
Whinging? Whinging. I like that.
That's an old school term for whining.
Oh, I like it. Whinging. So these are how these conversations go, Meridith. We go all over the place. So I forgot what my next question was going to be. Was there any other like challenges along the way for you as you were getting into the C-suite and growing in your career? Was there one big challenge that you really had to overcome?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that one of the biggest challenges that I had to overcome is that, I sort of fell into that. I had a lot of self-doubt, a lot of belief that I didn't, that I didn't belong where the doors, were opening for me. And that became, as I focused too much on people that didn't believe in me, so many of the naysayers, and didn't focus on the one or two people that did. And that derailed me. Really for a good year. I had a lot of insecurity because at that time I was married to an addict. I was trying to hide a lot of what was going on in my life. And a woman by the name of Linda Burwell walked into my life. And Linda worked at the executive level at another financial institution. And my boss had actually asked her to come speak to me. And she's one of these women that the moment she walked in the door, she's just one of those women that everybody wanted to be, right? I mean, just the way she looked, her presence in the room, she was brilliant with this track record of everything that she had done. And she sat down at my desk and she said, Jeff suggested that I come and learn about you. And I want to learn everything about you. But first I need to tell you about my life. And here is this perfect woman sitting in front of me. And she goes on to tell me that her brother's got schizophrenia. Her first husband is in jail. She grew up in a trailer park, and just goes on with all these things that she should be, quote unquote, ashamed of in her life. And she was laying the groundwork that she was exactly, if not, it didn't have a worse track record than I did. And that just changed everything for me, because I thought I wasn't allowed to go places because of the things that had happened in my life. And Linda really just opened the robe, the kimono, and said, look at my life and look what I've done. And that was the moment that I just decided, no more secrets. You can know anything about me that you want to.
There's so much power in being vulnerable. And we hear that all the time. And I learned this actually in a seminar with Gina. So my first husband, and I've had a few, my first husband was it was a domestic abuse situation, and which I got out of successfully. And I used to think, just like you were saying, Meridith, it was something that I was needed to hide, and I was ashamed of it, and I was afraid that people would find out about me. But finally, in this seminar, I can't remember what I came to it, but I realized that if I shined a light on this dark corner of my life, then it would light the way for others to hopefully get out of these scenarios that they were in that were bad. And ever since then, it's amazing that the people that have come to me with similar scenarios and how that opens up connection.
Yeah. It's, and how, How important it is, I think, just to be kind. I mean, that may sound really trite, but I'm always amazed by people. Like I was talking to a group of, I had somebody reach out and ask me to mentor them. And I was so impressed that they kind of just knew me from LinkedIn and followed some stuff that I did and reached out. And she's really having a hard time because she's 28 years old. She's been let go from her job due to this corona virus. And she's like, I don't know how I'm going to get where I need to get to. Well, when I was 28 years old, I was waiting tables at the Pizza Hut. I mean, and just, honest to God, I was 30 years old before I ever had a real job. And just like telling her that, she was like, oh, okay, you were way worse off than I was. I mean, like there's something to that in helping people. But I always think I'm always so amazed when people that I think are so successful, and they're just really kind and they're just really open and just really nice. And that's just had a big impact on me. And I want to do the same for other people, because there's chances that you have been as screwed up as I am are kind of slim to none. I'm so happy to tell you everything that's been going on, because you're going to feel better.
Well, you really hit so much on the theme of this show and who we are, right? Because we are, Rachel and I will both openly say how we've been hot messes. Sometimes we're still hot messes. And I think when we're that real and raw with people, that's what actually attracts people to us, because it makes them feel like, oh, I don't have to be perfect. I can be a hot mess. I mean, I try. Rachel's a hot mess right now with her hair.
That's what I am.
It's a hot. Yeah, it's getting hot in the afternoon today. Yeah. So that vulnerability piece is so important, especially in leadership. And I know that with your background in leadership and helping companies lead through, another question I have for you is, especially right now, what we're going through with COVID, with coronavirus, and the fear around it, and how people are feeling. How do you get a team to not be scared, and scared of change, right? Because we're about to go. We're already changing, but the change is going to continue. Yeah. So how do you get a team to not be scared of change, but actually get excited and motivated about it?
Yeah, what a great question. And it's a question that I've been answering all week long with the clients that I work with. I mean, every leader that I work with, this is different, right? I mean, it's bigger than 2008. I mean, we're afraid from a health standpoint, we're afraid from an economic standpoint, and we're afraid because we don't know what is going to happen. And there's three things that I've been telling my leaders that we have to focus on. And that is, you have to focus on relationship, connection, and trust. Is that this is the time that, people are being sent home to work. And if they're lucky enough to still have a job, you've got to make sure they have the equipment. You've got to make sure they're clear on what they're going to do. And you've got to, have your regular leadership duties of keeping them on goal and all those types of things. But at the end of the day, you've got to work harder as a leader to create relationship, connection, and trust with them. That means you have to communicate. You have to make sure that people have real clarity as to what's going on and real transparency as to what you have answers to and what you don't have answers to. And you have to care. You have to check in with them. You've got to realize that the person you just sent home could have a spouse who lost a job, could have two kids that in the background where they're trying to work, could have elderly parents that they're worried about. I mean, people just have junk going on in their life right now, and giving everything that they've got to you just isn't their biggest priority. And so I've been telling every leader that I work with to, on top of all the other things that you're doing, do those check-ins with people. Make sure that they use video so they see you at least once a week, and be really open about what the company's doing, how the company's doing, how important their role is. But at the same time, don't lie to them. If you say, we've had a bad month, admit that you've had a bad month, because people don't mind bad information. What they don't like is being void of information or getting information they just don't believe is right. Like every time we hear a report from China right now, we're all like, oh, I don't believe that. I don't believe you have any new cases of COVID. I mean, it doesn't settle you down, right? Because you don't believe it's true.
Right.
So leaders have really got to tap back in to the human side of things and realize that they have to make tiny little deposits in those trust pieces, constantly, because you may be in 30 days asking people to make a pivot that's 180 degrees. And if you haven't deposited in there, they're not going to go at full bore with you.
Yeah. And what you're describing is really comes down to emotional intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
And studies show that the higher up the leader, the higher up the ladder in the C-suite, the less emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
So what is your advice for those leaders? And it's not a ding on them. It's just because they're in a bigger visionary scenario. They're not in the thick of it to understand what's going on, to see the bigger picture. So any thoughts that you might have on how leaders can increase their emotional intelligence?
Yeah, I think the number one thing is stop when they think about their own success. And this is a tough paradigm shift for you. But the leaders that I see that are emotionally aware are more concerned about doing what their team wants and what their team needs over what their executive wants. And the reason that's important is it isn't like I'm a martyr and I'm just going to be there for my team, but they understand that the fastest way to get to the goal that the executive wants is to get the team to engage at the level that they need to engage. Like you, especially in the age of a virus, you can't push people to be successful. You can push them to hit a goal, but they'll never go all in. And so the thing that I tell leaders right now is if this whole emotional intelligence thing is beyond you, just do this. Here's one quick thing. Learn to lead through the power of the question. Because when you lead through the power of the question, you sow sensitivity and you give people voice and responsibility, which is emotionally intelligent. So if you have a goal that you have got to hit this week for your company, take that goal to your team and say, this is the goal we have been given. What is the best way to make that happen? If you need people to be more productive in a remote work environment, say, I need you to get more productive. What are some things that we can be to be more productive? That's like my quick start path to emotional intelligence, because it gives you a way to get them engaged, excited, motivated, and a part of it, which makes you appear to be listening to them and tapped in to how they're feeling. And when you ask people their opinion, it just jumpstarts intrinsic motivation.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you. Mm-hmm. Because I'm so passionate about emotional intelligence, and I'm like so passionate about helping these leaders get to that point. And I think that was really great ideas. Thank you.
Yeah. It's understandable that, everybody's afraid right now, and leaders begin to think, I just don't want to get fired. So I'm going to do whatever I'm told to do. Yeah. And that can suck emotional intelligence out of the workplace. If you can make your culture about asking people for their ideas and opinions, it's going to give them ownership and skin in the game.
Well, I have one more question for you, and then Rachel's got a few questions for you. And, given what we're going through right now, what kind of businesses do you think are going to survive through this crisis right now?
I do think, the ones that are doing incredibly well, and those are anybody in healthcare, anybody in the grocery store, business, all those types of things. But I think it's going to be the businesses that really are using the time right now to ask themselves how things are going to be different on the other side of this, and what do they need to be doing now to change in order to be, viable. I'm a speaker. I stand on stages in front of thousands of people. I don't believe my business is going to be exactly the same. Mm-hmm. So I don't think my business would survive if I stuck my head in the sand and just waited for groups of 3,000 people to congregate again. So it's going to be those types of businesses that are really using the time now to think about how things are going to be different, and to realize that I say we're all going to have depression brain, right? Like, we all had our grandparents who would save every little scrap of meat. And we're going to be the same way. We're going to, right, exactly. Toilet paper. We're going to be like cautious to go into a restaurant. We're going to be cautious to do things. And we're going to be cautious to get around groups of people. And if you can just embrace that instead of fight it and start to morph your business now, you're going to be in great.
Yeah, if people would just embrace Zoom, you can do just great meetings in Zoom, and you don't have to wear pants.
That's it. It's the best part of it, isn't it? Yeah.
But leave the meeting before you get up if you don't have pants on. Are you not?
I'm not wearing
pants. Or underpants, really.
Okay.
So leading, that was a great segue into. Now, these are our signature questions that we always ask our guests. So what, Meridith, would be your definition of sexy? How would you define sexy?
How would I define sexy? It is confident, humorous, vulnerable, and strong.
I like that. Very nice. Any advice, the best advice you've ever been given? And I know you mentioned some great advice, but the very best piece of advice you've been given in your career path or life path from a woman or a man?
Yeah, there's two. Number one is build your network, change your life. I mean, a network is everything. The second is you really are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. I mean, you said it so beautifully, Rachel, earlier. I mean, if you want to change, I try very hard to be the weakest link in my group of friends. And the more that I surround myself with people who are more brilliant than I am, just by osmosis, it rubs off.
And any advice that you wish you had been given?
I wish I had been given to listen to my inner voice. I mean, being raised in a family of addicts, because our parents loved us. They were always trying to tell us that everything was all right, nothing was wrong. And, the things that we thought were happening weren't really happening. And it made me believe others before I believed myself. And now I use, I'm very conscious every day to get quiet time. And whenever I have to make a decision, I go somewhere so that I can listen to what my inner voice thinks that I ought to do. And every time I trust my inner voice, it takes me down the path that I'm supposed to go down. So I wish I'd been told very, very young that the smartest person on my team is me, and I need to listen to me. And if it's right for me, it's right.
So awesome having you on the show today.
It was an awesome show. I really, really loved it. I just, when Doug sent me that email, I thought, yeah, this is a group of ladies I would like to meet.
Well, I have a feeling that we're going to create a good relationship with you.
I agree. Me too.
I feel it. So thanks again for this. And if our listeners want to learn more about you, what is the best way for them to connect and engage with you?
The best way is to find me at my website, which is valuespeaker.com, or on any of the social networking sites. I tend to live on LinkedIn, but I really do mean build your network, change your life. So if you reach out to me, I will respond.
Awesome. Thanks again. And thanks to all of our Warners for listening to this episode of Women Your Mother Warned You About, and to our sponsor, Dermavogue, who makes us prettier than we already are. Check them out at dermavogue.com. And they are still open right now during all of this.
God.
And we are thankful. To connect with me directly or learn more about Pivot 10 results and Carolina Improv, you can find me on womenyourmotherwarnedyouabout.com or GinaTramarco.com.
And to find me, Rachel Pitts, you can find me all over social media as The Singing Lender and at thesinginglender.com. And you can find all of our information, including Keith Walters' info at womenyourmotherwarnedyouabout.com.
And hey, if you love our show, give us more love by sharing it with others you think might love it. So we always love a rating and review, but we would really love it if you would share the love by sharing the show. And remember, Warners, keep on keeping it sexy. For the best relationships, keep it real, raw, and relevant.
And a little irreverence doesn't hurt either.
Bye, Warners. This really will get serious soon. Yeah, it doesn't have to. I don't think anybody wants it to be serious.
Women Your Mother Warned You About is a Pod About It production. You've got a great idea. Let's pod about it. Visit podaboutit.com for more information.
Woof, woof. Monkey, monkey.